Welcome to the Workology podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Welcome to the Workology podcast, sponsored by Workology. HR is in the spotlight now more than ever. HR leaders are busy supporting company programs, hiring efforts, strategies, and helping their organizations shape what their workforce looks like in the midst of a global health crisis. This is not anything new that you haven't experienced because you are living that life right now. The question is, how do we balance our own career development with our careers right now, with what the organization wants versus what our personal professional hopes, dreams, and desires are? Anne Fry, MSW PCC, is an executive leadership coach and speaker. She has extensive experience working with organizations of all sizes, both training and coaching their high potential and leadership teams. She's one of Workology's Upskill HR executive coaches in our new executive coaching program offered by Workology. She has been working with HR leaders to provide support and structure for career development and personal development as well. Anne, welcome to the Workology podcast.
Hi, thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. Looking forward to getting started.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who have questions about executive coaching, how this works for HR professionals or any professionals, you are in for a treat. I wanted to ask you, Anne, if you could tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to becoming an executive coach.
It's really interesting. Sometimes I call myself a by accident entrepreneur. It just sort of fell into it. I have a background in social work, clinical social work, and I have a background in running healthcare facilities. So I've been a college professor. I've had a private practice in psychotherapy. Then in the mid-90s, I learned about coaching. I was one of the earlier people to get accredited for coaching, and I've been doing it for 25 plus years. So I come from that social work business into coaching. And then what happened, I was offering a little class at University of Texas for their informal classes, and somebody saw it and said, "Do you do coaching with executives in workplaces?" And my response at that point was, "Sure. I mean, I've been one. I probably could do that." And I was already dabbling in business. And so she hired me to work with this VP in this very large company. It's a company that was here, it's here in the Texas area, it's called McLean, but they're all over the country. And that was my introduction. And from there, between speaking at conferences and developing more skills of my own, I moved into this position nearly 20 years ago and have been working with both large and small companies. For example, I've done work with several people at FedEx Ground, with several pharma companies, with KPMG, with Markham Amaj, a huge engineering firm, with McLean Company. It's like many, many opportunities to refine my skills and work with people at different levels, and particularly in the C-suite and in the high-functioning management teams before getting to C-suite positions.
Awesome. Well, one of the reasons we wanted to create this program for executive coaching program just for HR professionals is from my own personal experience in working with a coach and experiencing just really great clarity and the ability to grow personally and professionally very quickly. So I really wanted to bring that in to our program, which is called Upskill HR, to help HR professionals really hone in on the work that they need to do, what they want to do to be able to achieve their dreams, whatever their personal or professional goals might be.
Right. And I think that's really important. I mean, first of all, I oftentimes come in through HR directors who find me or talk to somebody. And so oftentimes that's the entryway. And on occasion, the HR individuals will have me work with them as well, particularly if they are HR directors. And they begin to see what the need is for people in terms of developing their skills. So are you asking me a little bit about, how coaching works in that level specifically, or
Well,
what did you want? Yeah.
Let's kind of start off, and with Upskill HR, we're offering group coaching as part
Correct.
of the Upskill HR membership. And so we are
Right.
doing what you call laser coaching. So can you talk about maybe how group coaching works, and then we can move on to how that's different from the one-on-one coaching?
Right. Group coaching works, and I call that doing kind of two things. Number one, it's culture coaching. It's working with a group of people to develop their own culture, whether it be a company culture or a department culture, where they begin to work on what works best and what doesn't work best, how to create an environment where they can grow, the people they supervise can grow. And one of the ways I do that is I usually have a book club. I have people read a business book. We come together as a group. We discuss it. We sift through what's the agenda? Where do they want to go themselves? Where do they want their department to grow? And so it tends to be a collection of several people in that department. If it's not HR, it might be another department. Like I worked with a bunch of medical professionals in a pharma company. And so group coaching is more open. There you are on the phone, and you're sharing things through question and answer, through dialogue, through what's working, what's not working. And then the individual coaching, when I can be one-on-one with people, is more where they can look at their own personal goals. And they can do that in a group, but one-on-one, they can be more open. Suppose they're like, I don't feel very secure in these areas, and maybe they don't want to say that in a group. So we would develop a protocol or a goal sheet for how they can work on their particularly individual goals. Maybe they've been working in HR for a long time and they love it, but maybe they're looking for what might be next. You know, during this pandemic, a lot of people are reevaluating, am I where I want to be, or might I want to do something else? So individual gives them time to do that. And with individual, we can really get to the heart of a matter with an issue, even in half-hour sessions. You know, what do you want to work on that's really going to focus us for 30 minutes? And you can walk out of that session with a plan of actions to take to move forward. In a group, that can happen as well, but it's not as easy to share in the group dynamics because other people are there listening, and you might not want them to know what's there. So having a combination is really great.
And you have to share your time with the other people within the group.
That's exactly right. You get shorter time. So it really is laser coaching. You might get 10 minutes to talk about an issue in the group, whereas you might have 30 to 60 minutes when you're talking about issues privately.
In your work, what have you seen as one of the most common obstacles for executives when it comes to making time for career development?
Well, number one, I think, is time. They're so busy themselves that finding one more half hour or hour to add to their schedule often feels like a burden or a challenge, like where do I put this? And because they would be working with me, it's not just that half hour or that hour. They have assignments. I give them homework assignments to work on, so it takes time out of other parts of their day or at home. And then I also want them to be able to take a look at not just what's going well, but what's not going well in specific areas. Like maybe they're in some kind of an executive position, but maybe they don't feel like they're developing their skills at the rate they should be. So then we look at a skill set. Where do they feel like there's something missing for them? Maybe they don't feel very assertive, or maybe they don't know how to temper their words so that they don't say things that get them in trouble. Or maybe they've been told that they have an arrogant edge and we need to work on cutting that. Or maybe they don't show enough gratefulness. So there's a lot of ways that we can get into their specific issues to kind of sharpen the way that they are operating so that they're more effective in their work.
I love it because
that makes sense.
It's honest and upfront. Like you as the coach are outside of the politics of the organization and the people.
Exactly.
And you can give real feedback. So if the feedback is you're arrogant, you might ask a peer. You're not going to get the maybe a response that is truly honest with ways to fix or change.
Right. Yeah. So I was going to jump in and say, so I usually give them an assessment tool called the Berkman. So we begin to see their personality features. And I have them do a 360 evaluation. So we do get feedback from other people about the way they see them. And I don't use a specific 360 test. I actually have one where I've developed a series of questions, and I say, okay, what are the questions you want to hear back from your peers? So that's very personalized. So there's maybe only 5 or 6 questions, but they're questions that the executive really wants to know the answer to.
I love it. And I love the personality assessment and the 360 review, because then you guys can really hone in and dive into
Right.
what might be some obstacles and tools and suggestions to try to move forward.
Right, exactly. And, you know, the thing about a 360 that's amazing is that it's anonymous, so they never have to know who did that. I might give it to 10 people, and so it would be hard for them to figure out. And when I type out responses for them, I don't do them in any particular order. Just randomly say, okay, here's comments that I received from people who received this instrument. And I only give them to the people that they want to hear them from. And I ask them also maybe a couple of people that would be a stretch, like that they might be more afraid to hear. But how else can you grow if you don't stretch?
One of the things I wanted to ask, and we use coaches in a lot of our daily lives. My daughter has her own swimming coach that she meets with 2 or 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's designed to help. I mean, she has a goal of being on the swim team. So we are working, even during this crazy time during the pandemic, on helping her reach that goal. She's a little bit older than some of the other kids that have started, but the goal is to be able to get honest feedback and move forward. So not unlike what you're doing for HR executives and business leaders.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to ask you was, how does executive coaching support or involve maybe other forms of training? You mentioned homework. So how does that, what's involved in like a typical homework situation or scenario?
Well, I have several different forms. For example, I have a form that they fill out in the beginning about how coachable are you. And then I have other kind of handouts that I share with them that I want them to do. And I assign them certain readings to do. I assign them oftentimes, I challenge them to go home and talk to their people in their personal life about, well, do you think I'm arrogant, you know, and get some feedback and come back with that. And we talk about it, because oftentimes we don't know individually how we come across to others unless they have the guts to tell us, or unless we see that even on a personal life that our friends are kind of pulling away from us. Well, what's wrong? Why are they pulling away? So being willing to hear the truth about who they are. So I can give you an example. Would that help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I was working with a guy. He was a VP of a large organization up in upstate New York. He was the kind of guy that always walked around with his arms crossed or his hands in his pocket. He would have very, very small talk with people in his department. And so we had a big discussion about that. And he said, well, I'm actually a very shy guy. And he never smiled or laughed. He was very, very serious. And so I got him to go home. He had a baby, and he had a dog, and he had a wife. And I asked him to go home and ask his wife and a couple of his friends how they see him. And they told him. And then I said, well, what do you do when you get down on the floor and play with your baby or play with your dog? He said, well, I do that. And it's really fun. And I said, well, do you show that? Do you express yourself? And he was able to see that he did. And he said, what do you want me to do? Come and get on the floor with people at work? The first time he ever made a joke. And I said, no, not suggesting that. But what do you get from that experience? You only know that by asking other people. And so we found out ways that he could kind of lighten up at work, how he could remember the names of some of the kids that his major reports had. And like, oh, make a note, have their administrative person send that kid a little present. Or when you go out of town, bring a little something back. If you know that they're a baseball fan, bring them back something, having some baseball cards or something. Acknowledge people, know when people's birthdays are, so that he was seen as a friendlier, easier person to connect with, and to stop crossing his arms every place he went and never smiling. And it's a simple thing. And as a result of that, he brought me in to do training with his entire team on 3 rotations, because they were a 24-hour distribution company. And we were able to do some really playful things. And I brought him a hat from Disneyland, and he wore the whole thing during the trainings. It was a huge growth. And he then moved forward, and he became the director of a larger unit and ultimately moved into upper management. So there are things that people aren't aware of until I help them bring it into the light so that they can see what it might be and look at ways that they might achieve that.
I love it. I think that's such a great example, and one that I think everyone here can relate to.
Yeah, we get really serious sometimes, particularly now,
Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you are listening to the Workology podcast, sponsored by Workology. And we're talking about why HR leaders need an executive coach. And I'm talking with my partner in crime, a part of our new Workology executive coaching program. It's Ann Fry.
Are you tired of putting your professional development on the back burner? It's time for you to invest in yourself with Upskill HR by Workology. We're a membership community focused on personal development for HR. Gain access to our elite community, training, coaching, and events. Learn more at upskillhr.com.
Can you talk to us a little bit about why a coaching approach is important in the executive world and also maybe specifically HR?
So really, when you think about it, coaching differs from other professionals. It's not really consulting, it's a kind of consulting, but the coach stays with the client, maybe for months or even years, to help them implement new skills, right? It's not like they come in, do a consultative project and leave. They usually hang out for a while. It's definitely not therapy, it's not like we're going to go back to the issues of your childhood. And it's not even like sports coaching, because oftentimes sports coaching has a lot of negativity attached to it at times, and it's rough and tumble. But what it is it works because I'm an outsider. I'm not a big fan of inside coaches. Some companies hire coaches to work internally, and I don't like that because I'm concerned about confidentiality. So if, as an outsider, I go in and I really challenge you, I really push you, to go for what it is that you want. And I think most people find that very empowering. And also, I'm not a threat to them. I'm not trying to take their position. I'm not reporting back. If I report back, when I start with a new client, and if they have a boss, I call that boss in on the very first call or in person, depending on what it used to be. And I say, I want you to tell me why you've recommended so-and-so for coaching. Say it's that kind of a situation. And I say to that person, you will never know any of the material that so-and-so and I talk about in our sessions because we have to have full confidentiality. The only thing I can share with you is that he or she is making progress. And if you don't see progress, then the three of us get on a phone call together and we talk about what that's about so we can move towards the next level. So the confidentiality of it is great, and the objectiveness is really helpful, I think. The outsider, being the outsider. And I use a lot of, like I said, a lot of affirming information, like we talked about earlier. I take great notes so we can always go back and look at what we've talked about before. And I always have a sheet that I don't always recommend. I sometimes recommend that they fill out a sheet and that they do a check-in on their homework, because I give them homework and hear what it is that they've made progress on.
As an executive coach for the Upskill HR program through Workology, I wanted to ask you, what's the most important thing HR leaders should know before engaging with a coach, whether it's with us or someone else?
I think you really need to interview them, talk to them, get a sense of how you feel about your conversation with them. I wouldn't blindly sign on with any coach, even if they came highly recommended. I would want to have some questions about that, and then I would think that they would also want to hear from the coach how they work. I'm very informal. I send out a notebook, and the notebook has a few. First of all, it talks about, are you coachable? It's got about 12 questions that say, are you really someone who's coachable? Like, are you fully willing to do the work and let the coach do the coaching? And it's got another form about, what is coaching and how is it different from other professions? And then it's got a series of forms for them to fill out to give me more information about them, so that there's a process and a procedure once they decide that they want to work with me. I also don't lock them into a contract. I think that's important. We usually sign a 3-month or a 6-month or a 1-year agreement, and we can always update that. They're free to stop coaching whenever they want to. There's no penalty for doing that because it goes a month at a time, but in blocks. And so there's nothing that feels threatening to them. The only thing that doesn't work is when somebody, like I had an example of a CEO telling his first in line that he wanted him to get coaching. And so I had already done some training in that company. That particular person liked me and asked me if I would coach him, not the CEO, but the other guy. I started to coach him. The CEO came to him and said, she's just a local yokel. She's just she's just here, and I don't think she knows what she's doing. I think you should work with my big hotsy-totsy, expensive executive coach. And that executive coach came to visit, and this particular client was pretty happy with our work and had me seeing other people. This guy walks in Texas in a three-piece suit with a tie, with a big attaché case. And he opens up the attaché case and he gives them this humongous notebook that must have been like, your graduate thesis, and says, here's all the things we're going to be working on. And it appeared that there was more of a dynamic of, this is what we have to do, as opposed to, what do you want to do? And he was charging $10,000 a month, and believe me, it was a whole lot less expensive. So he went back to his boss and he said, I don't fit with him. I don't want to be that structured. I want things to flow the way they flow. And that's what I feel, in working with Anne. So I think that's important for people to know, that they grow and develop at their own pace without, I push them, but without being pushy, if that makes sense. And they have the right to interview others and see whose style works best.
What should individuals expect from executive coaching with you as part of Upskill HR? I want to know things like, what does a meeting look like, maybe how long each session is, and how are the next steps defined for them for the next meeting, and so on?
Well, it's pretty clear. I mean, probably the first month is getting to know each other. So like I say, I give them the assessment tools. I collect a lot of information about who they are. We have very candid conversations about where they are in their career, if they're satisfied with it, if they're not satisfied with it. We cover that, so that what's the main reason that you're interested in coaching? Is it because you want to move to the new level? What would the new level be where you are that you're working? Are you already the director of HR and there's not another HR position there? Does that mean you really want to have a bigger challenge to bring yourself to in HR? Or is it time to move to a place where you have another challenge? My impetus is to figure out what's important to them, not what's important to their company. So we do that, and we do all the forms. So the first month is pretty much gathering a lot of information, filling out forms and doing assessments and all of that. And then we set the structure for the way we talk. It's like, so by the end of every session, they have some homework. I've been taking notes the whole time, and I give them the homework, like, okay, you said you're going to do this. I want you to follow up and do this. And they take it down, and they are accountable for responding to those. Now, circumstances get in the way. Sometimes they have to change their appointment, or something comes up, some special meetings, and they can't get that done. And I always ask the question, what got in the way of you not getting your homework done? And the reality is, even though they're there and they're doing this as part of their work experience, we do cover personal issues, not in a therapeutic way, but we don't work in a vacuum. So if they find themselves not working up to their capability at times, particularly if you think about the pandemic, a lot of people are working from home, their kids are working from home, their significant others are working from home. How are they doing during this time? I think everybody needs a coach right now, because we are having to stretch ourselves in directions we haven't had to do before, and not feeling in control. So the conversations are always about, what do you want to talk about now? What's the impact of this personally? What's the impact of this professionally? What do you think you need to do? And I'm the question answer person, and they're the answer person. And when they can't figure it out, I will jump in and make suggestions. Have you ever thought about using this? Or had somebody who was able to achieve X by doing this? And it's a one-on-one conversation, like having an angel on your shoulder who is there just personally for you. And the homework might be things that I put together on the fly. It's like, okay, I just thought of this other book I want you to read because it's something that has helped many people I've worked with, or I want you to go to listen to this particular podcast, or I want you to go and talk to particular people that you know. Say, I'm working with a coach and they think it would be important for me to know how I'm doing in this arena. It might be that if other people in their department, their HR department, know that they're getting coached, I might say, okay, talk to your peers, see what they think about this. Maybe they want to develop a new protocol. It's like, talk to your people, find out what they are thinking. So it doesn't have a total structure, but it goes where the conversation goes, given the back and forth that the person being coached is having with me through their check-ins and through what we reveal in our conversation. So it's not so highly structured. If anybody ever went to therapy, it's kind of like that. Well, what do you want to talk about today? Without the therapy part and the, all the terrible things that happened to us when we were young.
Yeah, no couch in this one.
No couch, unless you're sitting on it, right, to talk to me.
Yes.
But usually we're both in front of our computers or something,
Because I've worked with an executive coach, one of the things that was always hard was hearing truths about yourself and what you could maybe do differently. It's very personal. And sometimes getting that hard feedback hurts a little bit. It might sting, but you're asking for that kind of feedback so you can grow. How do you work with leaders to help overcome that obstacle?
It's so individualized, it's hard to say, but what I say is that you hired me because you were wanting to make some shifts and some changes and to grow. And so you have to allow me the opportunity to point out along the way what's working and what's not working from my viewpoint. And if you're not willing to let that in, you might not be in a position to want to be coached. Nobody has to know what our conversations are unless you tell them. So I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to put you down. I'm here to bring you into a place of flourishing, to be your very best, I like to say, whether as a human being on the planet or as in your family or in your job. We are made up of very, very different parts of us. And this is a moment for me to even say something about, a new specialty that I have, which you know about, is beginning to do coaching inside companies for people that are struggling with cancer and other serious illness and having to be at work. Very, very specific arena, but it's 40% of the population. So people being at work, dealing with cancer, treatment, heart issues, autoimmune diseases, they need to work with people, coaching them who have actually experienced those illnesses. So in those kind of circumstances, if a particular person at work, whether it be a CEO, a VP, a head of HR, if they've got someone in their family who is dealing with disease, or they themselves are dealing with disease, it's really great for them to work with someone like me and the cadre of people I have on my website, because each of us will work with people that we share that disease with. So if someone has cancer, I might be their coach or somebody else. No, we have two of us that have had cancer, autoimmune, whatever. And they're getting a real understanding ear. And so it might be them or it might be a loved one. It could be their mate. It could be their kids. It could be their parents. But nonetheless, that's a unique issue. So the relationship between the coach and the client becomes one of trust and a willingness to have difficult conversations sometimes. But I can only think of one time that I ever had anybody quit on me. And that was mainly because she wasn't doing any homework. And I asked her if she would either do the work or not return. And she decided not to return. So I have a great track record and feel good about it, because you have to have one person that you can have that kind of faith in that's separate from the people you live with and the people you work with, so that you feel that kind of trust.
Awesome. Well, I want to give people some resources if they're interested in two different things. First off, Upskill HR, which is our membership program allowing for personal and professional development for HR leaders, and it's online. We have live resources and webinars and learnings, but then we also have on-demand sessions, and you can learn more about that at upskillhr.com. But specifically the executive coaching program, that's also available in a 6-month or a 12-month package, and you can go to learn.workology.com/executive-coaching. And I'll go ahead and put the link in the show notes for you over on the Workology site. But if you're interested or intrigued and would love to work with you, Ann and myself, send me an email, send me a note, hop on the landing page, and even we can just have a quick chat. Again, we have a lot of ongoing laser coaching sessions and the group coaching sessions, so you can get a feel for what you would be expecting in the executive coaching program offered by Workology as part of our Upskill HR. So I want to thank Ann for taking the time to share her knowledge and give you guys some insights into what it would be like to work with myself and Ann as part of our executive coaching program. Thank you, Ann.
Can I make one last statement?
Sure.
I saw a statistic that said something like 80 to 90% of all CEOs work with an executive coach. And so if they work with one, why don't you?
It's a secret sauce, I think, for individuals to grow quickly, get honest feedback, and be able to move forward. I mean, we want to make the best of the time that we have. And I definitely think that with coronavirus and the pandemic, it is, like you said, making us reassess what's important and where we want to be in 6 months,
right.
1 year,
right.
5 years, 10 years.
It was a pleasure, as always.
We all need a strategic plan. How many times have you asked other people? Working in HR, we do this all the time. How many times have you asked other people how they see themselves and what they see themselves doing in 5 years and 10 years? Can you answer that question yourself? It's important that we get the tools we need as HR leaders. Our time is now. We need to be focusing on our growth and development in HR, no matter what the economy looks like or what crazy situation comes our way. We need to take charge of our personal growth, and that is the first step to future-proofing our careers in HR. You can learn more about Workology's executive coaching program at learn.workology.com/executive-coaching. You can also take a look at the Upskill HR program. So we have lots of different options that fit budgets of all shapes and sizes to help you up-level, upskill, and elevate your personal and professional growth, specifically in human resources. I want to thank Ann for taking the time to join me today to talk about executive coaching and get you familiar with who she is and how our program works, and answer any questions that you might have about what to expect from an executive coach. Workology's Upskill HR membership gets you up to speed quickly on the latest advancements and trends while connecting you to other HR practitioners to elevate your learning and personal growth. At Upskill HR, we have live training and webinars and videos and interaction of robust digital community of HR pros to connect with that are part of the Upskill HR community and membership. Then we also have on-demand resources for you. Nearly 100 webinars on demand and podcasts that all are approved for HRCI and SHRM recertification credits. This allows you to maintain your HR designation. You work so hard to pass that exam. You want to make sure you keep it. Our live training happens 2 to 4 times a month. We have over 100 hours of on-demand audio and webcast courses. Upskill HR gives you access to our executive coaching program. We have group coaching with Ann, and then the option to sign on for that one-on-one coaching that we've been talking about. You can engage with executive coaches like Ann, and you can learn more about Upskill HR at upskillhr.com. 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 Upskillhr.com.